Hello again, TechVicar here once more, and today I'm going to be taking apart a MARTIN Professional MAC500 move-in head. This one needs cleaning, and so I'm going to have to remove all of the different sub-assemblies here that hold the lenses and the prism at the front and so on, and clean out the rest of it as well, this round the circuit boards and connectors and inside the casing. The bulb on this is not very young, shall I say. It's not amazing, but definitely the bigger problem here is in the lack of cleaning that it's had. The image is just not clear. It's not crisp, and it's dull, and it's very obviously got a lot of grime in there on the optics. And I would highly recommend you do this with your units if they haven't been done, because it can double, triple, even quadruple the brightness of the output. So that's what we're into today. Starting with the case screws here, they just take like a quarter turn because they're just on a little semi-locking sort of spring-mounted thing. And once you've got them undone, I'm probably going to need two hands for this, so I may not be able to hold my camera in the right place, but you just sort of push this forwards and upwards towards the lens on the front. And then there's these locator little tabs at the front there that the plastic case slides out of, and there we have the unit. So I've not had this one open before. We bought this second hand recently, so I've no idea what we're going to find, but it should be pretty grim and dirty in here, and yes, it is. You can see straight away, look at the gobo wheel. To be able to see that amount of dirt straight off tells me it has not been cleaned in a long time. Quite possibly a good decade or more. You can never see very far down initially, but just taking a look inside here, you can also see there's the prism lens, and I don't think you can see it on the camera, but I can actually see behind that or onto the back of the lens and can see how dirty it is. Then there's the actual main lens on the front of the unit. Again, look at the amount of dirt that's in there. As for the color spades here, or blades, whichever you want to call them, again, I can see that they're not clean, and the light goes through those as soon as you use a color, obviously. So second gobo wheel there, I've seen worse, but it's still, again, pretty bad. So have a look around and you'll see very quickly whether or not our unit should be cleaned or not, and this one does, so this will be quite a job. Okay, first cover off, and I always put the screws back in the actual cover so that they're easy to find later. Okay, I've removed the side arms here on the unit just to gain better access, and also because I will very likely have to unplug some cables and stuff a little bit later. Take the arms off, pop the screws inside of them. In this case, they are, on my particular model, done with one of these what you call star bolt type heads rather than a regular screwdriver. On yours it may be different, but anyway. I have downloaded and printed out a service manual for the MARTIN 500, should have said that, and so that gives me step-by-step instructions how to remove for example, the gobo sub-assembly and color wheel module. And we start with the top airflow plate here, which is this black one, and we're going to work our way down bit by bit. Okay, that's the airflow plate removed, and now we go to what's called the hall sensor assembly, which is this next black plate here that's secured with these 4 screws here on top of the unit right there. Okay, just removed the 2 screws from the back, and then there are 2 smaller ones here at the front. And as soon as you sort of get that 4th one going, the whole sort of plate suddenly starts to become loose, as you can see. Just a word of caution here, though these Martins are made to just an extraordinary standard, and it's very easy to see as soon as you get one open why they are or were as expensive as they were. You do need to be really careful with them. I've opened them up before now, being very careful, put everything back together again, and you get it back working again, you might have an error or something doesn't even switch on, and you have to go back and check all your connections again. So just a word of caution to be really careful disconnecting any motor wires. The sub-assemblies here, make sure that the screws go back in the right place. They're easy to lose when you've got loads of them out on the table. Apart from that, Don't be too scared of it. Okay, just gently pull out the motor cables from the 3 motors. So you don't need to clip the ties that are on there. You don't need to do that. They can stay attached, no problem. And then this part will start to come out. We're just going to disconnect these 2 little connectors here as well, just so that we can pull that out over to this side. Okay, these 2 little babies have come out of the side of the little circuit boards here, as mentioned before. I've just marked the circuit boards with a marker pen, just number 1 and 2, and then obviously marked these as well, 1 and 2. It's very easy again to lose track. And then in order to remove the color wheel assembly now, we're going to remove this screw, but there's one on the bottom first of all from the lower chassis that I've yet to find. It must be there, I think. And once that's out, this main one will come out of here and the color wheel assembly will slide out. But what I'm going to do first before removing that is I'm going to take a vacuum cleaner to the inside of this and remove any loose dust that's around, because there's no point in doing the color wheel assembly and the gobo and putting it all back into a dusty case where it can all get dirty again. So I'm going to pick up the majority of this loose dust first. Unfortunately, as is quite often the case with these units, when you actually get to the dust, what looks like it's sort of just holding on by the skin of its teeth, if you actually take a vacuum cleaner to it, it doesn't want to go very far. It's because it very often has residue built into the dust, and so it doesn't just come off as loose dry dust, it's sort of oily. That can be for a number of reasons. One is from the lubricants and stuff, I think, that maybe have been used on the unit over the years, but most significantly is the environment that it's put into. And if it's put into nightclubs and things where there's smoke and stuff, smoke machines, then you get a residue in the dust. So I have to use a paintbrush and a vacuum cleaner to get some of this off. Okay, so I will just run a paintbrush around some of these areas right now with the vacuum cleaner nozzle meeting the end of it, and that just runs the dust into the vacuum cleaner. I'm sure our boys at MARTIN Professional would cringe at what I'm doing here right now. I'm sure they use some kind of technique that's similar to this, but it wouldn't be a regular vacuum cleaner. But I am being very careful with this and very often switch it just to half power. It's not overdoing anything. They don't bang it against circuit boards and things. Be careful with those sort of things. You might be able to see already how much cleaner this is looking just by a little bit of gentle paint brushing and vacuuming. And likewise, some of the stuff that's just falling out of the unit now that we're starting to disturb it. So it's all good. Okay, there's a lot of dirt come out of this unit already, and we still haven't got it apart. But it's much better to work with now that it's already much tidier and neater. Dust seems to just find little nodules and little places just to hinge off of, especially things like this on cable clips and ties and the ends of bolts, and down inside these little areas where the head moves on the yoke and things like that. So we can do our best just to do that bit by bit. This is the first stage of it, not finished yet by any means, but it's already a lot cleaner, this particular lady. So we'll go from here. Okay, the screws that I've just taken out before for this little plate module here, I've just popped them back into their holes in order to keep them safe for later. Then we're going to go to the back of the unit now, the bottom of it, and we are unscrewing these 2 screws here, one there, and there should be one under this cable here, and that will detach the color module at the bottom, at least, from the chassis. So I'll do that first, and then we have one at the top to remove, which is right there. Okay, and there it is, all 3 screws out, and you'll see now that the color module now is loose. 2 little motor cables to detach. I've detached one already from that side, and there's the other one on that side, so that we can completely remove the module. Very carefully just pull it out, and there it is. Okay, well, I've had more painful experiences than that in my life. That's pretty good. So that's the 2 color palettes there, and I'm going to take each one of these out individually, clean them with alcohol, get all the dust off them, and put them back. you can take a look now. If I put that up to the light somewhere, I don't know if you can see that, but on each of those there is like a fine mist. They're not clear, and all of that is robbing you of brightness. Okay, with cleaning these up, I'm going to use actually a sanitizing hand wipe that is drenched in alcohol, like this. I'm just going to let some of that just evaporate for a minute so it's not too wet. And I'm going to take each of these blades out individually, or in this case, clean them in place because the colors are glued on, and then clean them off, dry them off until they're clean. Okay, so how we get these color blades, spades, whatever you want to call them, off is that you just gently lift them, and that just disengages a barb underneath, which is that bit there, and then just gently slide them out. Brilliant, really. You can also reorder your colors if you ever wanted to. So you have them in a different order, or remove some of them, or change them, whatever. Now, of course, you can work your way around the circle here and remove each one individually, or you can remove all of the blades together. I'm electing to go with that simply because I've now noticed that there is quite a significant amount of dust hiding beneath and in between these blades. So I'm going to number each of them, take them out, clean the actual color wheel itself, as well as the colors, and then put them back. It's only once you start cleaning pieces like this that you realize the extent of how dirty a unit is, because you suddenly realize how much cleaner they become when you clean them and how much it takes to get that off. As an example to that, here's one that I've just done, that I've just cleaned. Clean it off with the alcohol first, and then use a new soft hand towel such as these, nice soft one, to gently, circular motion, just clean both sides. Contrastingly, you can see these other ones here that are covered in this sort of residue. I think that's from a haze machine. It looks like it, haze or smoke over the years. It's normal, it's natural, but and you might think, well, that doesn't make a lot of difference, but it really does. Once you start putting it up to light, you can see how that diffuses and just makes it dimmer. I know it's a different color, but in contrast to that, which is completely clean, and all parts combined, like all the other lenses in there as well, they've all covered in it. You've got 3, 4, 5 filters to get through before the light gets out. Again, let's take a look at the difference here between the uncleaned colors and the cleaned. Look at the difference right there. With the color wheel, you can't detach the colors. So I'm using my alcohol wipe and just going in circular motion underneath and above, and then the same with the drying cloth underneath and above, and that'll pull that up lovely and clean. A couple of these colors have little cracks and things in them, so you've got to be particularly careful with those actually. Now, one of the little difficulties here with doing the color wheel is once you've finished it, it can look really clean and everything else, but then you hold it up to the light, and you're going to see like a ring going around the edge of the colors very often. These ones I've re-cleaned, so you can't really see those now, but look at the one at the top there. You can see that the edge is still very scummy, so you have to redo that. Otherwise, again, your image will not be clear. You can see it there quite clearly, and you need to get your paper towel and stuff right into the edges. It's one of the problems with cleaning the color wheel here, is that it has this metal edge that makes it very difficult to get to the corners. Okay, I think that's finished. You can kind of go on forever with this, because to get it perfect is virtually impossible unless you're in a vacuum when you're cleaning it. But that's looking pretty good to me. So now I'm just going to replace the number 1 first, and it's just going to just pop it into here, push it up, click. Then obviously, I think it's obvious anyway, number 2. Push and in. Okay, so just locate, just push gently with your thumb through there, and there they go. And there it is, reassembled and beautifully clean. I'll put that aside for now because I don't want that in the way while I remove the next sub-assembly, which is the whole gobo and prism housing. Okay, again, consulting my service manual here. We're going to have to disconnect all of the motor cables. that are attached to this sub-assembly here. So these ones underneath. We're also going to remove the lower airflow plate here, and we'll probably need to clip these little cable ties as well, I believe. And then there are again chassis screws in the bottom, and I believe one in the top that will, when removed, free up the unit's sub-assembly here. Okay, all motor cables and sensors and modules and stuff have been disconnected electrically. Now we go to the back and we need to undo these two screws which secure this particular, the module, the gobo module and prism module and everything to the chassis. Now you want to be careful as you undo these two chassis screws, because as soon as you do, the module starts to already come loose in the house. So we need to secure that or hold it while we undo the screws. So I'm going to turn this flat, so it's on its belly as it were. Loosen the screws from the underneath, and now I'm going to undo them the last few turns with my fingers while I hold on to the module above. Okay, there we go, those are the two screws. Keeping the unit flat. I'm going to very carefully now hold on to the sub-assembly itself and lift it out. It's very heavy, but of course doesn't mean that it's indestructible. So there we have it. There's the gobo module and part of the prism module. That will enable us now to clean the prism, clean the gobos, and then we need to get further down, deeper inside to get into that lens right there to make sure that that's clean too. It also opens up the front of the unit now, so we can easily get, or more easily get, to the main lens and back here to what I think is a diffuser. Starting here again with the paintbrush and the vacuum cleaner, because I want to get as much of this dust out as possible. Gently but firmly, really. Go down on the face of all of the wheels and stuff. I'm not going into the depths of the gobos and stuff just now, just the main surface dust that seems to be everywhere here. It's all over the motor housings and the belts and the plates and everything else, so just get the worst of all the loose stuff off first, including on the back of the gobo wheels as well when you come around the other side, just as important. A lot of dust back here. And I will be having our first go at the gobos here while I'm using this brush, because all these gobos are metal or glass. Mostly metal, which means they're not going to just scratch or whatever with the use of a paintbrush, so we may as well get the bristles in there and give it a good see into. Not wearing my dog collar today, but just a half one. You might actually get away with the entire clean on these gobos with this brush, because they're nicely exposed and nice and big. I'll have a closer look in a minute. And then there's usually this one glass one right here, which you should be able to see. That one, okay, will need the alcohol cleaner again. But as I'm rotating this, I'm also seeing that on the wheels and stuff behind, there's a lot of dust again, so I'm going to take a look at all that too. Okay, the gobos here are held with a little metal sort of spring clip here, so I'm going to just remove that one for the glass gobo, and it just pops out like that. You just grab the raised edge there carefully and hold on to it so it doesn't spring off into the rest of your workshop somewhere. Okay, there's a second ring on this one, so oh, I see why. Okay, that's because the gobo can be removed as a wheel from the back, and then the actual gobo removed separately. Okay, that makes sense. So just going to pop that little spring out. Gobo drops out. I've already anointed this with alcohol, and I'm just gonna dry it up, make sure that it's clean. Again, some really ground in dirt there. All reflects when you put colour or whatever through this, and you have this beautiful pattern that comes on your screen or your whatever. We want that to be really nice and clean. Okay, here's a slightly tricky but interesting bit. We need to get to this lens here that's behind the prism lens, clean down behind it as well, the back side of it, and to do that we really want to take the lens off. I haven't found anything in the service manual yet that shows you how to remove it, so I had a good look at it, and the clue to removing it is right on the edge there. You can see just a little bit of you know, serration there of the edge, which is meant for gripping usually. Had a look underneath here, and there's a little spring, a little piece of metal here that I'm going to pop out with my long nose pliers. It's caught on a little hole on the lens. Once you've done that, you can rotate the lens until eventually it will actually line up. There's some spades on the other side that line up with some gaps. It's almost like a bayonet fitting, kinda. Once they're lined up with that, the lens will pop out. I'll show you that right now. I'm looking down there. Yeah, as soon as they're lined up, the lens pops clear. Look at that, brilliant. You can get that cleaned up as well, which as you can see is very dirty. There's the before shot and the after shot. Bit better, isn't it? So once you pop the lens back in, it's the reverse of the removal. It has two little locating areas which you can't really see on this picture, but on the left and on the right. Get those in, rotate the lens until the little, there's like a little indent, a little ding in the ring there, which you can just about see, is eventually where you release the little pin that goes back in there, and then the lens stops rotating and keeps it in place. Beautiful. Okay, the prism is next. I could probably clean that actually in place, but I think I'm going to remove it, and I believe we do that by just removing this screw and its twin under there, and the whole of that prism plate just pops off. 3 screws actually to hold this plate on. Right, there's the third one. So as we pop that away, careful not to lose the screw obviously. Little guy, whatever you want to call it, there we go. And the prism lens is out, which means now that I can clean under it and around it and everything else much better. May as well do that. At the same time, it gives me the opportunity to clean all inside this lot. Okay, cleaned it, screwed it back together to the top of the main bearing here. It comes off the motor. Belt back on, nice and clean. Little tiny bit of flecks of dust here and there, but otherwise good to go. This whole unit now, this whole sub-assembly, look at it. It almost looks, well, it certainly looks closer to the day it was made. Next I'm going to be going up and cleaning up the main lens here and whatever muck is left inside of here. But first, I'm having a cup of coffee. Having to go a bit deeper with this one, as opposed to just cleaning up that front lens, looking at some of the glass and the bits that are attached to the lamp housing and so on down here. They're also, again, not clean at all. So what I've done is I've just unscrewed rather. There's 3 star bolts on that side and 3 on this side, and then 2 just on the inside here, which will allow me to remove this top plate, and hopefully by doing that, that will give me, yes it will, some better access at least to these areas without having to, I mean there's a load of stuff all riveted and bolted and screwed together to get this actually fully apart, but I think I can get into it significantly well enough that we can certainly improve the cleanliness of these parts. Okay, going to be quite a different approach with this, because even with the lid off it's still very close work down here, very tight. I don't want to damage the glass, the lenses, and I can't see how else to get them out because everything seems to be, a lot of stuff seems to be riveted in. So I'm just being very careful, and what I'm actually doing is taking again a new, very soft paper towel, it's more like cotton this, and just wrapping a long screwdriver in the end of it, sort of like this, getting it down inside of there, and very gently working my way around to clean the glass. I can still see some marks on there of long-standing dirt, but it's much cleaner than it was. I don't want to use any chemicals on there at all, or even alcohol, in case I leave a residue, because I can't easily get to that to clean it back up. So treat that one with care. Martin guys would probably tell me a better way and the official way to do this, how to detach all this stuff, but it looks like a million screws and a load of rivets and stuff like that to get it all actually apart. So I'm going to do it like that for today. Clean out again any excess just by blowing it out or by vacuuming it out or whatever else, and we're much better than we were. Now to the front lens, then we'll start putting it back together. I'm cleaning this one in situ. You can already see after wiping the lens, even now, look at the muck that's still left over. I'll have to clean this one twice. Should have said all you do is, the shutter gates will be in the way, so just push them out of the way. They just sit there loosely. Motor's not under any tension. And then clean it back and front, and take another look at that in a minute. And there we go. Check that out for different. Now, as I've been moving this thing around and cleaning it up, still bits falling all into the bottom of the unit here that I'm gonna keep clearing away, but it just shows how much muck was in this one. I've not seen one quite this bad before. Well, this is the first 500 that I've opened to this degree. I'm talking about other lighting units, but anyway, that's nice and clean now. I'm gonna do one final whip around, make sure everything's good, start putting it back together, and thank the Lord it's gone well. So I've just secured this whole back plate area here that we were getting down into the lamp housing. Before, that's those 8 star screws here, 2 on there, 3 on each of the sides, going through there. And this is the point where I really pray a lot as I'm doing these putbacks together, or the time when we're pulling it out. I'm constantly in prayer asking God for wisdom as to how to take these things apart, because otherwise if we mess it all up, it's been pointless and we've lost finances and all sorts of things. So start putting the rest of it back together again now. Next bit is going to be the gobo and prism assembly. Just going to sit right in there, so we'll get that done now. Okay, so just carefully placing the gobo assembly back into the right place, and then we have the 2 chassis screws that come underneath right here. So I'm just going to do those up. Okay, just carefully holding on to the gobo and prism sub-assembly here. Nose the thing up and got those 2 screws back in there. Now we have to rehook up all the motors, making sure we don't miss any of the cables. Look back at the tutorial from the beginning if you like to see where each of them went if you're not sure, or I always take photos while I'm doing these things and I can look back at them, and even then it's easy to miss. Okay, that's the gobo prism sub-assembly put back in place. Next we have the colour wheel assembly. Which fits in the slot behind, as you remember. Just a little pointer that might help you. When I take screws out of the chassis, sometimes you can have 20, 30, 40 screws that are bolting in the sub-assemblies and stuff. I very often put them back in the hole they came out of until I reassemble it, or on the unit itself like this. And that really helps you to not lose the screws and to know which holes they went in, which sounds simplistic, but it really is very useful. Up to you. Okay, so down into here. Nice and careful here. We want to make sure we don't lean the colour wheels against anything. So I'm going to get my hand off the camera for a sec now and make sure that this is mounted properly so I don't break anything. Another little pointer, before you actually screw the sub-assembly back in, have it half out to attach those motors. Otherwise they're so far down inside there it's very hard to get your fingers around them. So just attach the motors on its way in. A bit fiddly, I know, but doable. So you can see that one there. I can easily attach that now while it's half out, and then I drop it into place. Okay, and we're down in, we're slotted into place, so I'm going to secure the chassis screw at the top first, then we go underneath and do the other 2. Okay, so there we are. Screw number 1 right there, screw number 2 right there. Gently swivel around. Still got some cables and stuff fleeing about like these, so just be careful when you rotate. And the colour assembly should be rock solid now as it is. Everything free moving. go from there. So I'm going to bolt this back in place again. I've had the screws fixed to the nuts that are mounted in here, the mountings that are mounted in here, so I know where they go. I'll fix that back to there, and again, don't forget your electrical connections. Okay, that's the top plate resecured. Now we are doing the air plates. What are they called? Airflow plates, I believe they're called. Yeah, top airflow plate and bottom airflow plate. Final top plate here, going in the air. That's the airflow plate, and I think we've got everything. Just do a final check here for cables being in the way. You sometimes have to just pull through some cables where the head goes back into the yoke, because some of the slack can pull through here, and I found that the cables were about to catch on the gobo wheel that's just inside there, as you'll be able to see. So just pulled the slack back through a little bit. Same with these, just want to check that there's nothing too stray and nothing too tight either. Just be careful there. It's always a delicate process, this, and I'm trying to do the best that we can here to make sure that the unit goes back together properly. Okay, all back together apart from the cases. So this is the first major test that we will do on it now, before we put the rest of the covers back on, and it's simply to make sure that the thing is all back and working and everything is okay. So here we go. Okay, good start. Run through the opening testing sequence. Gobos and colour wheels all finding their indexing positions, their starting positions. Checking tilt and pan and everything else that goes with it. About to see there's the colour wheels rolling at the moment as well. Second stage, it will go through now to its home position. At this point we're waiting for the lamp to strike, and there we go. Just going to send it through an auto pattern. Okay, we have an error code flashing here, which I think is a colour wheel error. Okay, well, consulting my manual here, the C1ER is the colour wheel 1 timeout. Either the magnetic indexing circuit malfunctions, sensor defective, or magnet missing. After the timeout, the effect in question stops in a random position. Contact Martin service personnel for assistance. That's a pain. And it's happened since we've had it apart, so I need to have a look at that and just make sure that I've connected everything correctly. And look again at it after that. Meanwhile, we're going to try out a test sequence here to see what's going on with everything else. And there we go. You can see that the colour is mixed right now. That's our problem. It's settled between two colours because of that, whatever it is, faulty sensor or missing magnet or whatever. So I'm definitely going to need to have a look at that. Good. And the iris control, all good. That's the prism control, all good. This is the colour wheel here, so I'm checking the magnetic sensors now. There's a magnet fixed to the edge of the wheel here that then lines up. You won't be able to see it from here, I don't think, but if you let me see if I can just get my screwdriver somewhere near it. If you look just there, there's a little very difficult to get light into there, but there's a little black receiver there that comes off the circuit board, and it lines up with a magnet that's mounted on the end of the wheel here, and that's what gives it its reference as to its starting point. So we'll roll it round. There's the magnet mounted to the wheel, and looking at it, it looks rusty. Now that might not be significant enough to cause this problem. It may be a problem with the actual board itself or the cable that's going into it, but I'm going to clean the magnet. I'm going to do the same on the other colour wheel. There's another one there, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so I just located those magnets, and they were rusty. They weren't very clean, so I just scraped them off with a little electronic screwdriver like this, just to clean them up. I fired it back up, and praise God, we have no error message running anymore. And you can see up there that it's just a single colour now that's running, and it selects the test sequence order. So that is brilliant news. Thank God for that. That means the whole thing can be put back together now and is working. The bulb needs an alignment. I've noticed the hotspot is off, but that's not a very big deal. This all ran well on the second test sequence there, but then the colour started to malfunction again, different way this time, and eventually I found that this loom that comes across here, as soon as it started tilting and panning, had actually run into the path of the colour wheel and was catching on the cables. Now I'm usually very much aware of this, and I did draw them through carefully, but obviously not carefully enough. So in this case now I'm going to take the loom where I believe it's meant to be. I think it's meant to be behind here, so it stays right out of the way, and there's a little hole there that I would imagine is for, at least can be used to cable tie. So I'm going to cable tie the cables to there, and it will keep it right away from the colour wheel, make sure it all runs freely, and we should be good to go. Okay, so down into there, and then running away through the head into the yoke and clear of the spinning colour wheel. Finally just clip off the cable tie tail that's left there. Get rid of that, make sure it doesn't fall down into the unit. And again, one more test, but I'm going to do a manual test first, that being just going to tilt and turn the unit and make sure that all of the cables on both sides are making sure that they're running free of anything moving, and that when they do rotate, we've got enough give in them to be able to rotate smoothly and safely. It looks good. I'll do another test on it. So there we go. Workbench is clear of the MAC500 for today. The floor, however, is not. That's some of the carnage left just from the cleaning of it. Well worth it. Give it a go if you have MAC500s that are not looking too great anymore. Okay, our newly cleaned unit is running and running beautifully. Optics are all crystal clear, and I'm going to just show you the effect. Right up here, I'm projecting up here 3 of the MAC500s. The one on the left has doesn't have a very great bulb, but has served us okay recently. The one on the right is what I would call an A1 lamp. It's second-hand, but it's clearly running brighter than all the others. And the one in the middle is our new one. Now, what's very significant about that is before I cleaned this lamp, you could literally hardly see that on the back wall. You could literally hardly see it. Now, it's every bit as bright as the A1 lamp. In fact, it's probably brighter because it's 12 feet, this lamp, this fixture is 12 feet or so behind this one. So this is obviously closer to that back wall and should appear brighter. So that was very much worthwhile, the 3 hours or so it took to take that apart and to clean it, because it's come up like a brand new unit. Hope this inspires you. Always remember to give it a go if you're willing to take that brave step to see if you can fix something like this. Save yourself a fortune on getting it serviced at an official Martin engineer's base of some kind. Not trying to do Martin or any other test engineer or repair engineer out of business at all, but from a charity, Christian charity point of view, I would always say that any money that we can save is vitally important. And for the sake of 3 hours, 4 hours of careful work, we've saved a lot of money here, and I've got about another 8 of these to do, so in the long run it should save us a fortune. So that's got to be a good thing. God bless you. See you again soon, hopefully, with the next TechVicar installment if you're interested.